We're all at different stages and we're going to have different priorities for how we actually spend our time. The first thing is that prioritization of what's important. And there are tools to do that, the Eisenhower matrix and different things. I can certainly share some things in follow-up. And depending on where you are in your season of life and your work, that might be, I had a coaching conversation this morning with a writer, and for her, there's a lot of personal things going on right now. And so she's in a season of life where she has to make some decisions about actually scaling back her work in a way that will allow her to meet her revenue goals as much as she can, but she really needs this other time over here to look after herself and family and so on. So that's one type of bucket categorization and prioritization, like what's actually going on for me at the moment. And for you, you're in clinical practice, so you probably have a heavy workload and you're also trying to create this side path into CME writing. You're carving this new path. And so because it's newish, or feels new, my guess would be that one key thing to prioritize, or there are two. One is to get that sense of what CME is and where you see yourself fitting into it. And that can involve things like figuring out which clinicians you want to support in your writing. Which kinds of organizations do you want to work with? Do you want to work with medical societies, healthcare associations, or more commercial kind of medical education companies? Commercial because they're for profit. Everyone's for profit these days, even nonprofit. But medical education companies tend to be one of the largest categories that hire freelance writers. And CME is very freelance friendly in comparison to other parts of medical writing. So I just want to flag
Ah,
that. So
mhm,
identifying that kind of ecosystem where you might find yourself fit in, or where you want to direct yourself, and then looking at the kinds of deliverables that you want to work on. In CME, there's a whole kind of different range: needs assessments, slide decks, text-based content that is online and enduring, text-based content that is more interactive, that has polls and multiple choice questions and patient cases and games
mhm,
and all sorts of things, outcomes
mm,
reports, white papers, manuscripts. There's a whole bunch of different things that you could potentially work on, and you certainly don't need to work on all of them. And you certainly don't need to work on all of them at once. So that's another thing to think about as you to take into consideration to help you create your priorities. And then the third thing is skills. Doing some kind of skills inventory to help you identify where your deficits are, what you might need to work on in order to start making your way in CME. So given where you are now, my suggestion is that those would be priorities to work on. Once you have some kind of answers to those, they're not really questions, but once you have some solutions to those challenges, let's say, then you can start thinking about networking and spending a little bit of time figuring out, first of all, where you want to spend your time. And you did mention LinkedIn, and it's certainly the main social media platform where the CME community hangs out. You don't necessarily have to hang out there an awful lot to get a sense of who the key players are and who you might want to work with. And there are all sorts of strategies around that. But once you have your skills identified, the kind of folks you want to work with, the kind of work that you want to do, then spending a little bit of time marketing what you're doing to the people that you want to work with in order to start getting some paid projects. And LinkedIn can certainly be part of that. So can email outreach. Tapping into your current network as a clinician is can be a good way to start, especially since you do that have that clinical expertise. So that's where I would start in terms of prioritizing. You can't, I think, when we're starting out, we feel that we have to do all the things all at once. We do not. What can be really helpful is mapping out a path with clear milestones and some kind of timeline. I tend to go a little bit flexible on what timelines look like because there are so many parts to life. And we live in an uncertain world that can also be really unpredictable in our own sort of personal circumstances. So building in some buffer there so that we don't end up beating ourselves up when we don't meet those milestones and timelines. There's a tendency, I think, for a lot of us who come into this field to feel like we have to have all the things in place right at the beginning, and that is not the case. We can take really small steps and build slowly over time.